Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Manuel Charr, what to say about this guy? He's just reaffirmed that he's the most deluded heavyweight boxer in the division, and he's been a complete non-factor in recent years, despite parading himself as a world champion but not fighting, completely inactive since 2017, since winning the belt, the regular title, from a faded and jaded Alexander Ustinov. And I might add, the belt came on the line at the last minute, no one asked for it, and the guy's held it hostage since. So what's prompted this video is some comments that Charr's made to Sky Sports, and the video is two-part because he's hinted that there will be a fight happening in April against Trevor Bryan. It's not locked in though, so I'll talk about that, but also he's made comments about Dillian Whyte beating him and then wanting to get a path to Anthony Joshua. And all of this, for me, just reaffirms the guy's a complete non-factor, and his statements are somewhat laughable. He wasn't a factor in the heavyweight division 3 years ago when he won the title, and he's even less of a factor now. But this talk about a fight on April the 11th, which he's alluded to, so potentially going to be in Dubai against the WBA interim title, Trevor Bryan, and that was also another situation. Bryan versus BJ Flores for an interim title. They put the belt on the line in the days before the fight, similar to Charr and Ustinov. And part of the rationale from the WBA in the Bryan case was they said that there was some legal issues between Charr and Fresakendo, who were negotiating for a fight. And this is back in 2018. They said, oh, this is not going well. But everyone denied that and said, what are you talking about? So the WBA, often it's, own thing, doing its own thing, handing out belts like candy, handing out belts to guys who aren't even fighting. And Charr beat Ustinov, a faded version, couldn't get him out of there. And since we've seen Alexander Ustinov stopped by a number of fighters, Michael Hunter, Joe Joyce, etc., but yeah, he hasn't fought since. It was a combination of protracted negotiations, first with Fresakendo, then he failed a drug test ahead of a fight with Fresakendo later in 2018, and then all of a sudden Fresakendo out of the picture, and he moves on to negotiating with Trevor Bryan, and they were meant to be fighting towards the end of 2019. But for whatever reason, it never happened, and we never really found out why. They were going to be fighting off in Africa, sort of a Rumble in the Jungle Part 2 45 years later. But Manuel Charr, in the time that he's been champion, has been talking himself up as the biggest thing since sliced bread, parading himself around on social media, but not really doing anything, actually doing nothing in the ring to justify him having a world title. 0 defenses in over 2 years. And this talk of Trevor Bryan, April 11 in Dubai, look, I'm not buying it. I'm not convinced at all. It's been clear from statements that Charr's made in the last year or so, the guy's looking for a cash-out fight. And I think this is part of the reason that he's not actually putting himself in the firing line against guys like Trevor Bryan, because Bryan, although he's unproven and untested, is a power puncher, and I would back Trevor Bryan all day, every day, and twice on Sundays to spark out Manuel Charr. And if he does fight Trevor Bryan in April, the reality is he's probably going to get a much smaller payday than he's actually hoping for. And he's made it clear that he's, in the last year or so, that he wants to be fighting, the big names of the division. He said he's open to an Alexander Povetkin rematch. He's open to fighting all the champions. And a year or so ago, he actually, dismissed Dillian Whyte and said that, he was beneath him and all this sort of carry on. And I think at the time, people were like, what's this guy on? I mean, it just proves the levels of delusion. And every time this guy opens his mouth, he says something that, pisses, most of boxing fans off, including myself, parading himself around like a champion, but he's not doing anything to prove that he is a champion. And that fight with Ustinov, was that really something that should have been a title fight? I don't think so. But now he's all of a sudden done a bit of an about turn on Dillian Whyte. So he's told Sky Sports, if the WBA don't accept Trevor Bryan, I want to fight from the top 15. I have to have a comeback fight. And actually, that's a change of tune too from the top 15. He's never been talking about that. It's always been trying to cherry pick, Wilder, Fury, Joshua, Povetkin. Those are the guys that he's been naming. And then he says, I want to come to the UK and fight Dillian Whyte and knock this guy out because I want Joshua. I want the best heavyweight on the planet, which is Joshua right now. I know when I fight in the UK, I can be the next Prince Nassim. All the people will love it because my heart is big. I'm a fighter. I'm not scared of anyone. I fight everyone in my career. I never say no. When I beat Dillian Whyte in the UK, I will be the next big challenge to Anthony Joshua. I hope in the future I can make a big fight there because I love the UK. I love the fans. I love the boxing come from the UK. Let's face it, he wants to have a big money fight and a cash out because if he faces Dillian Whyte, he's going to get knocked out and in brutal fashion. Let's face it, Manuel Charr has only ever really been of a certain level. I mean, at the time that he won against Ustinov, he was, a top 30-ish sort of guy, as was Alexander Ustinov, and Ustinov has been going backward at a heavy rate of knots. So all this talk about, knocking Dillian Whyte out, it's just fantasy. This guy is looking for a payday, and that's all. He wants to capitalize on this regular title that he has, and perhaps he sees his window closing here because the WBA, maybe it is actually going to finally do something. There's talk in the article that that fight with Bryan has been ordered, and he says, if the WBA don't accept Trevor Bryan. See, that's the thing. I don't think the WBA would get in the way of that fight. I think it's more that Manuel Charr won't want that fight to happen because he wants to go off to the UK for a payday. He doesn't want to take $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 to face Trevor Bryan in a fight that no one really wants or needs to see, but the WBA needs to order that to clear up the situation with him having 4 heavyweight titles. It's madness. And he will probably know that Trevor Bryan is a dangerous heavyweight who could beat him, and he doesn't want to get beat for short money. So this is why all of a sudden Dillian Whyte is back in the picture. And the fact that Whyte now has a WBC interim title and the WBC mandatory, that's got Charr sort of not talking smack about Whyte now. So I think that Charr, he is the most deluded guy in heavyweight boxing right now. I mean, some of those comments that we just heard that I read, he really is out of his mind on some of this stuff, that he can be the next Prince Nassim. I mean, the delusion is strong in him, and he's clearly looking for a cash out. I'll leave it there, but what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.